Right. So, I think it's about that time I actually talked about one of the past issues I have when it comes to games being denied access to discriminated peoples around the world, though there's more to that. Right now, apparently this game is apparently destroying the modern audience. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but considering that there are social biases crushing social biases, I just hope the right type would actually be... Well, I just hope that any social bias would actually not matter at all to the gamers. But, yeah. That's individually their decision to take on the social bias that Helldivers gives, or just stick to them just being neutral. As long as they don't hurt other people, that's fine with me. Now, I am seeing a video here called It's Over for the Modern Audience. Asmongold TV has released another video, and by this time, it has been 2 hours from the time I'm recording this. So, yeah, it's over for the modern audience. I don't know what this is about, but let's find out.
Arrowhead Studios COO speaks out against forcing DEI into games. Reason:
you shouldn't force diversity, equity, and inclusion. Look at Dustborn. Look at Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League. Those are classic examples. Those are absolutely classic examples. You cannot deny that. So if they cannot learn from those things, how would they be able to change to redeem themselves, right? I mean, yeah.
Arrowhead Studios COO speaks out against forcing DEI into games. Recent social media post Arrowhead COO, creative director of Helldivers 2, revealed that he's working on the high concept for the studio's next game. Under the post, he engaged in a brief discussion regarding DEI and the act of shoehorning into a game just to have it. The comments drew a mix of feedback from the community, with some praising his transparency and others pointed out potential flaws in what he said. So I'll go ahead and I'll actually show the comments themselves. Some guys...
Okay, what's the...
flaws in what he said.
Okay, hold on.
So I'll go ahead and I'll actually show the comments
Okay. The tweet says, I don't like labels, but mankind is united in its extreme xenophobia on Super Earth. Inclusion. Hashtag inclusion. So, maybe that's diversity, equity, and inclusion? Or DEI? I really don't care. Make good games. Don't make a contemporary political statement. This was what Johan Pilsted had stated on social media. Basically, this is a statement about too much inclusion of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a genre. And I think what he says here makes actual sense. Too much of that is being put into games, and we've seen games like that, and games that actually embrace DEI fail. If you don't know Concord, C-O-N-C-O-R-D, basically it's a multi-million-dollar game that was supposed to have a reputation, that was years in the making. However, it got shut down the moment people have learned how it was made, and people did not take any shit from the BS of from the bullshit of its creation, basically. It was bad. Not just because of the social biases that it pushes, but at the same time, it's just damn. It's just damning, really. It is already telling that some BS had to actually be applied to a game just for it to actually exist. Seriously, they had to keep funding the game just for it to exist. And if that was not enough, they should have read the room. The developers and the publishers should have read the room and just halt it where it was still possible to actually save it, when it was still possible to save it. But they didn't, and it actually suffered. So yeah.
Some guy said never add DEI to your games. And then this is again the COO at Arrowhead, one of the main people that made Helldivers 2 possible. If it doesn't add to the game experience, it detracts, and games should be a pure pursuit of amazing moments. How would DEI have benefited Helldivers 2? I don't like labels, but mankind is united in its extreme xenophobia on Super Earth. Inclusion, so maybe that's DEI. I really don't care. Make good games, don't make a contemporary political statement. Palstar, this is bait. It's not bait. This is a common conversation that a lot of people are talking about. And you're going to see more and more developers that are doing this. Now, why are more developers doing this? It's because the games that have done like these contemporary political statements, it's because they've failed. That's the reason why. It's because these games aren't selling well. They're not making money, and the people that are doing them are causing tons of people to lose popularity.
I mean, the political statement is a valid one because it's always about the political and social statements that actually make the game, correct? There's nothing wrong with making a political or social statement if the political or social statement that was presented to them is a failure, and then the political and social statement that actually has the right comment actually begins to generate more agreeable remarks than the former. I mean, it makes sense, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion only works to a certain extent. Not every fucking time.
So, Executive Pilestat of Arrowhead, that of course being the dev studio behind Helldivers 2.
Look, I may not like Helldivers right now, but if they're really just trying to make sure that the game is consistent, even if it's not accessible to many countries, like the Philippines, fine. He's got a W for that. He's got at least some integrity as with someone in his position.
Recently made a statement that has absolutely offended the modern audience. Part of his take being, quote, I really don't care, make good games, don't make a contemporary political statement.
Exactly! Don't make a contemporary political statement, or heck, don't even make a social statement that actually nails down the social bias of the game. Basically, let others figure that out themselves, or you will ruin your own game. This statement actually makes sense.
Unquote. But yeah, that's just a little preview, so let's read all the context and then see his full take. And then of course after that, we'll take a look at the people offended by what he had to say.
Of course.
And it all begins here. On December 31st, 2024, he said, with 10 minutes to 2025, what are your expectations and desires for what the next Arrowhead game will be? I'm working on the high concept, but I would love to hear your speculation. A response from the user ANX saying, never add DI to your games. To which he responds and says, if it doesn't add to the game experience, it detracts.
If it doesn't add to the game experience, it detracts the game experience. Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
And games should be a pure pursuit of amazing moments.
Exactly. Be creative. Don't just push a single line of messaging. Don't push a messaging that comes from different angles if it leads to the same statement. Exactly.
I think this is another really good point. Like, I'll talk about this a bit more. Is that if it doesn't enhance the game, why is it there?
If it doesn't enhance the game, why is it there? Good question, Asman. It shouldn't be. It should never be there.
Because I remember when I would, so like my dad was like an executive at a publishing company. He was an editor. He was a writer. He's wrote novels before. Used to publish a newspaper. Used to be a college professor. And one of the things that I would always be the most afraid of is to tell him or have him see that I was writing something. Oh, fuck. And I remember one of the things, though, is like, I mean, he would be right about pretty much everything that he would try to correct me on. And so what he would do is he would say, like, listen, if you can explain this in 3 words or 5 words, do that. Don't over-explain things. Don't add in sentences that don't need to be there. Be concise and direct. And I think that's really that's the difference.
User, that being Drew, says...
And he was right, by the way. He was right about it.
How would DI have benefited Helldivers 2? To which Piles once again responds and says, I don't like labels, but mankind is united in its extreme xenophobia on Super Earth. Hashtag inclusion, so maybe that's DI? I really don't care.
Yeah.
Make good games, don't make a contemporary political statement. That, of course, being the part of the take that we read a moment ago.
People were unhappy about this.
Some people really weren't happy with this take. For example, we have this response from someone who claims to be bylines over at Hard Drive Magazine. I wonder what this gaming journalist has to say about this.
Whoa. Purveyor of fine graphs and pithy, plucky, prim parallelisms. She, her... Oh boy. If you keep expressing that you have pronouns and you're trying to stick to a social standing, you need to get yourself checked. Do not reveal your social standing and then just follow an echo chamber that forces you to only maintain your social standing and then expect a good reaction from people. Seriously, you're putting yourself in a loop, and I don't like it. People should not condone this.
I wonder. Man. Sorry, I don't know why it's so laggy.
Bylines over at Hard Drive Magazine. I wonder what this gaming journalist has to say about this one. Well, the tweet reads, good media often makes contemporary political statements. 2 examples. Politics are inextricably woven into the fabric of Starship Troopers and your own game, Johan.
What? Wait. Good media often makes contemporary political statements. 2 examples. Politics are inextricably woven into the fabric of Starship Troopers and your own game. But the thing is, Starship Troopers, the film itself, as I understood, is anti-war. Hold on. Is it an anti-war? Because the last time I actually watched Starship Troopers, for me, even if it has some comedic satire, that's what it still looks like to me. It is for me, anti-war. That's what I think. That's what I think of Starship Troopers. Now, as for Helldivers, considering that that Super Earth itself is exaggerating and at the same time overpowering their weapons against any type of hostile, the same as Starship Troopers, it is mostly the same thing. Basically, it's just a fun thing that audiences are seeing from both the Starship Troopers movie and from the game Helldivers 2. So, good media often makes contemporary political statements. Media often makes contemporary political statements. However, it's not always good if there are no parallels. If it's not always good if there are no parallels of those political statements to real life events. If there are no parallels, then why are those political statements even necessary? Why are these messages even necessary? You have to understand, put accurate representation of real life events into a game for others to relate. Unless there is a parallel event, the political statements should not often be necessary. Okay?
Here's a quote tweet that's upset with this take.
I love how people think that they understand the media better than the people that make it because of their interpretation. And they're like, well, we've interpreted the media to have this meaning, so that means it does.
The bio of this person saying 67K on TikTok, video producer, host, gaming content creator, etc., etc. And they say CEO thinks he's making a PR statement, but actually just posted a nothing burger for bigots. Same bigots that harassed his own staff and tried to boycott his game for not having gender-specific body types. 2022 game devs gotta stand on business.
So if we're talking about like people standing at business or anything like that, look at Sean Ryan Twitter. No, yeah, Cybertruck. Well, I'd have to look at that in a minute. But anyway, I don't think anybody's being a...
Look, business has an agenda individually. Individually. Should be individually. God damn it. What are they thinking? Oh my god. The CEO thinks he's making a PR safe statement, but actually just posted a nothing burger for bigots. Same bigots that harassed his own staff and tried to boycott his game for not having This is not true! Tried to boycott his game for not having gender-specific body types? No, they tried to boycott his game because there was less access to people because of the number of countries that were discriminated on, just because Sony didn't have those countries on the list of being able to make PlayStation Network accounts. What the hell is this? I don't know this.
A bigot because they don't want something in a video game that doesn't need to be there, right? It's really not that complicated.
He's not the CEO, though. He stepped down 7 months ago as CEO and switched to CCO. So yeah, you gotta love this person who can't even read a Twitter bio telling devs how they should run their company. Well, Pyle's take would also offend the journalists over at Kotaku, and they'd write about the situation. In their article, we've got this paragraph that reads, "Hundreds of fans responded. One wrote back, 'Never add DI to your games,' referencing the acronym for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives, which anti-woke culture scolds often use as shorthand for perceived efforts to force progressive values into video games and other art and entertainment. Despite its innocuous roots, DEI..."
He also just made a statement based on his opinion with no agenda. Well, these people, they don't want you to have an opinion. And if you do have an opinion, then they'll try to get you, deplatformed for it, or like get you in trouble for it. That's the reason. He made both sides mad, which means they might have a point. Yeah, true.
Become a loaded term in online debates, not because of what it actually means, but for what it symbolizes to certain reactionary
With us or against
groups.
us mentality?
I love how they try and frame it as having innocuous roots, when the reality is that DI is intrinsically linked with corrupt ESG initiatives and massive corpo asset firms like BlackRock. It sure is ironic that self-labeled activists these days are some of the biggest corporate bootlickers
I don't even think that the DEI really fundamentally is the problem. I think it's just journalists and not even journalists, developers that are putting political statements and social statements into games that people don't want to hear. It's actually that simple. It's not about like whether they're political statements or not. It's about the fact that people just don't want to hear them. And I think it does absolutely have to do with what the statement is. Because a lot of the people that are making these statements are, I don't think that these statements are popular. And people don't agree with them and they don't like them. And I think that's really what the issue is. It's not that they're making political statements, it's that they're making political statements that are extremely unpopular.
There. The comedy doesn't end there, though. Kotaku continues and says,
It's a good thing a lot of the people who are in my position, those who are not at the level of CEOs and CCO, at least we can definitely support that statement in particular, because, first off, the most sane person who is not rich and who is not loaded would always support, mostly support, if they're not extremist at all, they would definitely support the sanity of the social biases we have. Not pushing the social biases like a blind owl. No, well, we're not blind owls, not all of us.
The irony of the tightrope being walked, distancing Helldivers 2 from the current online culture wars, while not outright rejecting them, is that the sci-fi shooter is loaded with political allegories, satire, and parodies of fascist propaganda. Of
course it
One
is.
of the central wars players fight in the game is for oil.
Yeah.
Quote, Helldivers 2 lore is funny and unapologetically political. Bugs are oil, bots are commies, managed democracy is a scam, unquote. Reads a PC Gamer headline back at launch. What's their point in citing some random PC Gamer headline? Like, why is that supposed to matter? Anyways, then they say...
the reason why it's because it's, again, these people live in an existence that they've created a fabric that they all cross-reference each other to create legitimacy. But if you just take the entire thing down and you don't pay attention to it, then it doesn't exist. So it's like one person who's lying references another person who's lying, and then after this happens 3 times, people believe it to be the truth. And I think that's really where the issue is. I don't think the issue necessarily is that they're putting a statement in there. The problem is they're saying that this is your opinion, you must have. Oh yeah, no, exactly. And not everyone speaks English. Yeah, robots are taking oil. There's no culture war. They're trying to homogenize cultures into one perspective. Oh yeah, definitely I think it's happening. But yeah, people are really mad about this. I did see it.
Pile stat might mean that Helldivers 2 simply steers clear of any direct references to hot button issues in contemporary news headlines. That might offer...
Yeah, there's also a huge spectrum too. It's like, for example, like racism and it being bad. It's like the way that, for example, a game like Dustborn handles racism versus the way that Metaphor handles racism. These are 2 very different things. The way that a game like World of Warcraft handles slavery versus the way that a game like Final Fantasy 16 handles slavery. These are 2 very, very different things.
Yeah.
And so it's not even really about what the topic is. It's about how contemporary and how, like basically how related it is to, like, actual human condition versus...
Basically, you've got to have proper contextual basis for you to actually make a contemporary statement. So, but based on this fact, you must have contextual basis. Do you still want to claim, do you as a person who supports DEI still want to claim that there are accurate political statements because there are parallels to those political statements in the real world? The thing is, there are no parallels to those political statements because there is lacking of contextual basis in the game. Okay? That is exactly the position that Concord has and Dustborn as well. Basically, they're making shit up because they think that these social issues exist. The social and political issues actually exist. For the most part, they were made up. This is why those games failed. Dustborn was not appreciated because of this, and Concord was shut down because the reception was absolutely weak because of those things. Basically, they don't even know how to reflect on it and change those things. Publishers and developers have to look at it inward, not outward. Otherwise, it will not help them.
It's just like making a statement about, like, what's popular this year.
Distance to inoculate the game from certain modern political controversies, but it also might be a distinction without a difference when it comes to people who consider any game that makes a point they disagree with to be unnecessarily political. For others, quote-unquote DI is just code for criticizing any game that doesn't star white guys, as the idiotic reaction by some to Naughty Dog's Intergalactic the Heretic.
It doesn't star white guys. Look, it can star different types of races, but is it there an appropriate time for different characters as long as it is friendly to lore? Look, there's no how I've been saying this a number of times already. I'm not sure if it's often or a bit casual on my take a bit casual on the number of counts. Look, but just hear me out on this. The appropriation of a certain race can be most likely emphasized with the need for it in the lore of the story itself, whether it's in a game or in any piece of media. Basically, whenever it is a necessity for a certain race to appear in the piece of media, whether it's uninteractable media or just the game itself, basically it just leads to necessity. The usage of different factors of people like race or gender or the sexuality, it just basically all types of media would eventually just look at the necessity of it. It should only look at the necessity of those people. Okay? Not include them entirely just for the sake of diversity, equity, and inclusion alone. No. That is not how those types of media work. And it would be, and pushing social messaging all the way is a bad move.
Profit reveal trailer has made nauseatingly clear.
This is what I think these people don't understand, and I've said this before, and I don't want to go into it too much, but if you have a bunch of people and they're all idiots and they're your audience, you either have to make content for idiots or you're going to go out of business. So if there's enough people out there that, like, you know, for example, if you don't, like, I think that in India they don't like eating cows, right? Because it's like a sacred animal.
Yeah.
So like if you go to India and you're trying to sell hamburgers made out of cows, maybe you're not going to have as many people that are going to buy them.
A simple analogy. Zach, you don't know how simple that analogy is, and that is great. Oh my God. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for that simple analogy.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, cows, right? And that's it. And it doesn't matter, like, whether you think that it tastes better, only North India, right? It doesn't matter. None of these things matter. Like, if you go to a country where LGBT stuff is banned, and then you start trying to sell, like, gay romance stories, well, then, big surprise, you're going to get arrested, or you're going to have people not buy them. Basically,
Don't push the message where it's not supposed to be pushed so that you don't get called out for pushing it inappropriately. Basically, you're pushing a social message inappropriately and you don't stop. What do you think happens? People will revolt and you will be the target. Of course, if you're the one pushing it, that's just how it is. And depending on your reputation, people will take you differently depending on your reputation. And if you have a very bad reputation, even if you have a respectable position, people will not give a fuck. They will be laying their hands on you. Absolutely. How long are people going to stop believing the truth here? Damn it.
so the issue is that people believe in, like, the value of their message is so important and so powerful that it should transcend reality itself. But the
Transcend reality. Actually, that makes sense.
fact is that, like, if there's a lot of people that don't like something, that really is the bottom line. That's it. That's the bottom line. That's it. Nothing else matters.
Bro, there's been so much critique about that
Know your
trailer
audience,
for
yeah.
various things, including the overt product placement, and critiques about the main character's personality and how obnoxious she is, like slurping the straw in response to her friend warning her. And these corpo journalists and their associated activists are always the ones trying to reduce things into a bunch of straw men, trying to say like all the criticism is just because there's not a white guy starring in the game. Oh my gosh. Like, bro,
I do think that there is a component of that, and I feel like a lot of people don't want to address it, but it is absolutely true that there are a lot of people that are just simply, we want to be represented in games, and we are not a, you know, some like dark-skinned minority like girl, right? Like, that's it. And so absolutely people do that, and I bet probably in Asia it's the same way. You're gonna have groups of people that want to have characters that represent themselves. So what? Well, what I'm saying is, like, that absolutely matters. Goku and Wukong destroyed that. I understand that. And I don't think it's a make it or break it, but I do think that factor exists. It is there, but it's not huge. Does that make sense? Like 3%? I'd say 10.
Journalist is the one saying that. They're the one making that up right now. The modern audience types are also upset over on Reddit, as Pyle's tweet would get posted there in this post titled, "All citizens of Super Earth are welcomed, cherished, and equal." I don't know if Pyles understood what he was replying to. And the OP including a screenshot of the discussion over on Twitter that we went over earlier.
Here we go.
However, that post largely getting mocked by the other divers. For example, the post getting 0 upvotes and 50 responses.
comments.
Never add DEI to your games. Well, if it doesn't add to the game experience, it detracts. And games should be pure pursuit of amazing moments. That is a good response.
Ultimately also getting locked, and we can see exchanges like this. User Alice said, "Nah, that's a fairly decent corpo response, very neutral." To which the OP says, "I fail to see how having diversity or things that add expression for players can detract from the game itself. Saying something is DEI is a racist, misogynistic, queerphobic dog whistle."
For sure, man. For sure.
Another Redditor, Read New, saying, "That's one heck of a word salad." And the OP saying, "Read more," getting -5 downvotes. And Read New saying, a Reddit response. So the OP Nizzy is trying to say that calling something DI is a racist, misogynistic, queerphobic dog whistle, that word salad stuff, Which is hilarious because it's a term that the corpos made, and then was also getting used by government.
No, queerphobic is I don't know why you would say queerphobic and not homophobic. I feel like we already kind of have a word for that, like what's really the difference, but I have no idea.
And then once people started talking about and criticizing the terminology that these large groups created, oh, well, suddenly it's just a dog whistle, it's just problematic.
Right.
They completely ignore how that terminology even started and try and smear any of the criticism as just this problematic list of buzzwords. It's really pathetic. Another response.
I think that also it's again, I feel like people are just, they don't want to have a video game tell them what to think or what to believe or anything. They just want to play a game. And I think that there's a lot of developers. It's very obvious that this is the case because you've had so many games that have had like these weird forms of social messaging that have like really done bad. And I think that there's been so many of them that have failed that you now have developers that feel like they're willing to speak out against it and say like, yeah, this is bad, we don't support this, we're not going to do this anymore. Because the developers, there's probably, and it was probably always the case, that many developers and people that worked in games didn't like this type of messaging, but they felt like they were forced to add it because of like corporate reasons or like HR reasons or some other reason. But now that it's become less popular, they're able to like push back against it and say like, yeah, we actually never liked this, and thank God now we can finally say it. It wasn't kind of proof for that? No, well, that's what I'm saying, right? Why not having the name body type 1 and 2 is not respectful to people? I don't understand the comment. I don't think that there's any justification. Like, if there's a game that has body type 1 and 2, I think it's stupid. It's just stupid. And there's no reason to do that. I can't understand why. Yeah, it's male and female. Like,
from the beginning, it was supposed to be male and female, but it had to be type 1 and type 2 for some. State the obvious already, please.
That's it. I mean, it's literally that simple. It's devolving. Yeah, it's a dumb virtue
signal.
Why should
modern politics have a place?
I mean, Elden Ring does it, but it's stupid that they did it.
and where humanity is governed by Super Earth.
Yeah.
DOP saying, what's going on with Super Earth is a modern type of politic. Also, people existing and being different shouldn't be seen as political. That just sounds crazy. To which user RV would say, saying DI is just people existing while being different is either gaslighting to the highest degree, or a misunderstanding of the reasons people dislike it. DOP Nizzy responds, saying that's how it's being used. And RV then says, in most cases, people hate DEI for the same reason they hate affirmative action. I
don't think that's true. I think people hate affirmative action because it gives people an advantage that they wouldn't naturally have. That's totally different. I think DEI is like not even nearly as bad as affirmative action. Yeah, let's be honest.
Both agree that it's clearly wrong to prefer someone based on skin color or other identity traits. Disliking that someone was hired or chosen based off of skin color is absolutely not the same thing as disliking that people are different from them. Now let's go back to where Reed News said, why should modern politics have a place in the fictional universe set in the year 2184 and where humanity is governed by Super Earth? And take a look at this response they got too, that reads, because you're playing the game in the modern day right now. Same reason Helldivers 2 has 2 body types and not male/female options. Real people are playing this games in real life. And it's pretty cool to be respectful of that. To be clear, I don't think Helldivers 2 is doing anything wrong at the moment, but that's the answer to the question. So first,
I find this to be funny that you're talking about real people, and it's about being respectful to real people. I find it to be disrespectful that we have to pretend that 99.9% of people don't either identify as male or female, and we have to use a different type of language that is not something that 99% of people at least identify as, and instead we have to destroy this vocabulary and replace it with invented vocabulary that effectively means the same thing. So, like, how is it inclusion when we exclude 99% of people? Where's the logic there? There's no thinking involved at all. It's but true, people didn't earn it. It's not about earning it or not. It's just about common sense.
Well, a game can have a male and female option, and that doesn't intrinsically make it disrespectful to people. That's a completely brain-rotted take right there. And yes, a fictional universe can have its own in-universe politics, and it doesn't need to be making some sort of modern-day political reference with that. I think also, like, another big component to this is that I think a lot of people that are, like, against this kind of stuff have started to realize that if they push back on it enough, companies will stop doing it. And I think that it's working. I think it's working in, like, a massive way, too. Because, like, now you're seeing companies, like, for example, Disney is pulling back on this. Like, you have other games pulling back on this. You have games failing on this. Like, I would say keep doing it. Keep doing it. And if you don't like having the body type 1 and 2, you don't like having, like, I don't know, pronouns or whatever, if enough people complain about it, you can make it go away. Keep that in mind. And Ubisoft Games fuck, yeah, I've lost billions of dollars. Yeah, if enough people complain about it and enough people get mad, they will kill it and they will stop doing it. You mean everybody's getting fired? Well, yeah. I mean, as consumers, if enough people get together, you can do that. You can make that happen. Absolutely. About some of these people, it seems like they've turned their own minds into mush with their political obsessions. However, speaking of brain rot, it's important to remember that Helldivers 2 also did have this crazy community manager, Baskinator, who caused a ton of problems for the game earlier in the year. And regardless of what Piles is saying right now, that community manager does apparently still work for Helldivers, according to her Twitter bio. And if I recall correctly, there was also some other, like, crazy Discord mod they had, Purple Squid or something like that.
They were,
once again, if I'm recalling correctly, was getting upset in Discord about people who critique D.
That's not what happened. What actually happened was, on the Helldivers 2 Discord, people were posting art, and certain people posted furry art, which caused the, I can't believe I'm saying this, which caused the Discord moderators of that subreddit, or of that Discord, to, sorry, I just get them confused a lot, to ban anybody from the Discord who reacted with the throwing up emoji to furry art. That's right. This is on the Helldivers 2 official Discord. You got banned for reacting to, oh, and then also, the post itself, if you reacted to the post with a clown emoji, You also got banned. Crazy place. Really crazy place that is, huh? Oh my god, it got ridiculous? Yes, it's so stupid.
And there was also that Spitz person.
So dumb,
I do
yes.
think they let Spitz go. But I'm not sure what happened to Purple Squid, and it does seem like Baskinator is still around for sure, at least according to the bio.
What a
As
surprise.
such, many gamers are currently skeptical of any statements that Piles is really making against DEI, given that
What's
actions
furry
do
art?
speak louder than words. But that's where the situation is currently. All that said, I do
Let's
like to
keep it
find
that
amusement
way.
from things going on the internet, and
Yeah.
regardless of all that, at the very least, Pile's statement did upset the modern audience, which of course is amusing to see. So I hope you enjoyed this segment, and if you did, consider liking and or subscribing. Appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is, I'm very glad to see
So
people, just a second, sorry, it's like doing this a whole lot.
So
I don't know why it's so laggy. I'm so glad to see people pushing back against this, and now you're seeing actual developers that have made successful games that are coming out and saying like, hey, listen, you know, we don't want to have anything to do with this. This isn't what our messaging is or anything.
Hey, Get, thank you very much. Thank you very much for actually checking me out. Thank you for waking me up. I'm not actually sleep. Well, I am dozing off, but at least I'm keeping my ears open on what to say. Basically, what I understand from this is that different heads of development studios also feel the same. Others who are in echo chambers, believing more in diversity, equity, and inclusion, just know that it's only necessary because it furthers their agenda. Nope. Unless there is proper contextual basis of that message inside your game by the parallels it has from outside the game, you cannot put these messages inside the game. Period.
Anything like that. I think it's a really big deal. I mean, the guy from No Rest from the Wicked said the same thing, and I think a couple of other developers said that also. Finally, yeah. And I think that the reason why is absolutely because there's been so many people that have mobilized to fight against it and have been so negative about it. And so if you don't like it or you don't like any of this stuff, then just keep pushing back on it, keep complaining, keep getting mad, and eventually it will go away. Keep in mind, that's the place that that's how we got to where we are now, is that people like that used to complain, and everybody was like, oh, it's okay, they can have that, they can do this. And don't let it happen.
I
What
see.
was the turning point? What was the turning point? Probably Concord. If I had to say for gaming, I would say probably Concord.
Yeah, Concord is
and like
actually the
just for
example.
gaming itself, right? I mean, definitely like Dustborn. No, it's just that's a small game nobody cared about, right? It's just a meme game. No, it's definitely Concord.
It definitely is. Should
I'm
be.
trying to think like Suicide Squad. Yeah, Suicide Squad was bad. Oh, Bud Light. But that's like a cultural thing, right? I think that Bud Light was the first example of like something that was like woke that just got massively rejected by the public. And the existing like power structures couldn't maintain like its control over it. And I do think like that was the case. Yeah, the Gillette ad too. I remember that happening, but I think that wasn't really what it was, because Gillette didn't take, like, the Bud Light one was crazy because they actually took it down and apologized for it and everything. So I feel like that's a much bigger difference here. Yeah, Dragonflight, yeah, Bud Light was huge. Yeah, I think that's the big difference. Jaguar came later. The Jaguar one I think is kind of small. I'll be right back, sorry.
Alright, that actually is something. So, basically, the lesson says, don't put unnecessary messaging without contextual basis, and prove that there are parallels from right outside. Because unless there's proper contextual basis, those messages are not even fucking welcome in the media. They're not welcome. Period.